Hello, people of ADE 2020. My name's Danny Howard here in my basement studio in London. It gives me great pleasure to be here hosting this very special panel, The Evolution of Our Sounds by Timbaland, with special guests. I know these guys need no introduction, but let's say hello anyway. First up, the main man, Timbaland in Miami.
What's up? What's up? What's up? How y'all doing?
We've got Martin Garrix in Amsterdam.
Yo.
And I don't know how far away he is from me, but apparently David Guetta is in London.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, looking forward to this chat, guys. But let's jump straight in. And I want to start with Tim and talk about the role you played for the sound of the noughties, the 2000s, all the records, all the tracks. You know, your influence in that era. And where I want to know, where did you get your inspiration for all the music during the noughties?
I think I got my inspiration just from everything, you know, just from everything that was around me. You know, I was always intrigued by all types of music. I never was one to be just centered on one thing. I just like all types of sound. And I think what kind of inspired my sound for that period of time was like a lot of like Prince, Rick James, Zapp, Queens, David Bowie, Donna Ross, like all like stuff that had funky grooves. That was my inspiration.
Had to be funky. I like that. And did electronic dance music have a role in your influences at all?
I believe, I don't know if this is electronic, this group, but this is one of my favorite groups, and it was called Kraftwerk.
Oh, and, we've heard of them, right?
Yeah, Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk was, and they had this song, Numbers and Pocket Calculator. And they was kind of introducing, that's when like modulators was like computers, and they was turning knobs, and I was like, man, that's kind of ill. And then came Devo, you know, like, and that kind of was my interest into dance music. If you want to call that dance.
You can probably elaborate more on Kraftwerk, David. Did they influence you in the early days?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because first, I think Timbaland and myself, we grew up on similar music. I'm also a huge Zapp fan, and Rick James and all of that I absolutely loved. And when it comes to Kraftwerk, actually the way I discovered Kraftwerk was not even directly from electronic. It's because in the early days I was playing hip hop, and there was Africa Bambaataa, and the first wave of hip hop was electro, and they were sampling or replaying Kraftwerk, but with that big 808 beat on the top. And I was like, oh wow, this is crazy. And at the time I didn't have much money, but I was spending even to buy records. But I was spending all my afternoons in record shop, and I would like look at the records and all the credits and study. I would study, like I would know the names of, you know, every musician that was part of the band, because at the time we were talking bands. And I heard about Kraftwerk through those early electro hip hop records, and then later I discovered them, of course, and the crazy shows also. Like it was unbelievable. But I think actually it's funny because I think we have the same culture, because I'm in the electronic world, but tending to go towards soulful melodies and funkiness. And I think Timbo is in the real, funky world, but he was always going towards a little bit electronic in his sounds. Actually, I remember when you were using you were using almost a trance type of arpeggio, but just make it slower, when it went pa 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 pa. This type of things were being used in trance, but it's just that you made it slower and funkier. I think the same. I think that what makes music interesting is fusion. And when I started, I was like, I was a little bit looking down on pop. And I was like, I just need some good drums and a bass line, and everything else is just slowing down the music, because I just wanted to make the people dance. And then later, I've learned kind of by accident, by working with Chris Willis, that was a gospel singer. I've learned about harmony and all of this, and I started to understand that, actually, it's not that easy to make pop music. It's actually the most challenging thing in the world. And I started to listen to different types of music. And when it comes to me, probably the moment where I really crossed over was the moment where I merged two styles, and I was using electronic dance music from Europe with urban melodies from America. And, I think every time, it's very hard to create a sound, but from zero, I don't really believe in that. But every time you manage to combine different styles together when they're not supposed to be combined, you actually create a new sound. And I think Timbaland did that before us, and probably better.
Let's bring Martin in. You're the youngest here. I mean, I'm fascinated hearing these guys talk, as I'm sure you are.
I grew up listening to these guys.
Exactly.
It's we were talking about what they were listening to growing up. But no,
how have these two influenced your sound and influenced you as a producer over the years?
Well, for me, David, was one of the main guys who introduced me to electronic music, and Timbaland made beat making and production so cool. And I remember, whenever there would be a new song released, and I would analyze the sounds, I would hear Timbo beatboxing, and I was like, it was so much. It was a lot of thoughts in my head, like, oh my God, how did they do this? How did they do that? And I grew up listening to David and Timba. And it's crazy. I'm still very inspired. I got to work with both of them, which have been crazy sessions, very inspiring. And
we'll talk about that very soon. But Tim, David was just saying, he's making it sound very simple, very easy, and then obviously explained it was more complex than actually what you hear. But is it key to keep it simple when you're trying to make a pop hit, or can you make it as complicated as you want? I mean, what's the secret?
The secret of making to me a pop hit, I think it changes every generation. I think what was once changes, and I think now today's pop hit versus yesterday's pop hit a little different. I think yesterday's pop hit was you could it was about, and I think it's kind of similar today. It was back then a lot of harmonies, like David's right. It was a lot of harmonies in pop hits, and it was the vocals. Because if you think about NSYNC back then, the music could be a little dramatic, but it had to be. Music always had to be simple, but it was more about the vocals, the tuning of the artistry, and all those big harmonies. Like, when you listen to old NSYNC stuff, you hear all those big harmonies. And back then, when I started when I got into the pop world, I always wanted to mix in what I loved about the 80s and what I loved about hip hop. So I think my first merge to that world was, I remember telling Nelly, yo, we gotta rap. And then the chorus gotta feel like it's Kraftwerk, Devo, some David Bowie type shit. You know what I'm saying? They gotta feel big. They gotta feel like, keep feeling fascination. They had to feel big. So I said, well, we gotta get the right beat first. So I was telling Danger, I said, man, we gonna change pop. And I said, we gonna change. I said, I done did urban. I said, I gotta change pop, because I said, I got the right artist. And so I told Nelly, we should do a rap song. And she was like, yeah, I always wanted to rap, because she loved, was it with trip hop back then? It was a thing called trip hop or whatever it was called. And she always wanted to rap. So I said, what we're gonna do is go back and forth. It's never been a conversation. I said, when I watch pop is, I remember back in the day, I was looking at some of the old Mickey Mouse stuff, and I was like, what made Mickey Mouse Club big on whatever, Disney Channel, or whatever it was. And I was like, man, the conversation between girl and guy. So we put that in a song going back and forth, and then we come in big with the chorus, we out of here. And I said, we changed pop. And then after that, it did that. Then I told Justin when it came to Sexy Back, he was like, I'm bringing sexy back. I played the beat, and it was just two little things. Me and Danger did the beat. It was like, bam. The beat was already grooving by itself without that on it. So I was just on the keyboard, bam, bam, because I feel like less is more. Less is very much more. So it's just about finding that right groove. And I always trying to search for that. I always love Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, but I said, how can I make that today? And then I always like, how do you make those four to the floor without being so, how do you make it so where it's not so boring? You know what I'm saying? Because it's just, everybody can do a four to the floor beat. It just, but how do you make it sound interesting? So I had these 808s and these drums, and I was like, boop, and I had these cow, like these little tom, boop, 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 and it had this rhythm, and I was like, ooh. Then we started hitting the keyboard, and I, bam, little simple sound. I'm like, that's it. And then Justin was like, I'm bringing sexy back, like something like that, just talking it, and I said, yeah. And that was the song, right? So I said, you can't sing on it. You gotta talk it. You gotta talk to the girls. Talk in their ear. Let them know that you about to be the shit. And so people were like, I don't know, it's not singing. I said, man, we changing pop. We gonna give them all the elements, the chords, the feeling, because that's all it's about. It's about a feeling. It's, you know what I'm saying? All these structures back then, I told them, man, we're gonna get rid of the harmonies. We're gonna get back to the swag, because if you listen to David Bowie and Prince and all that shit had swag, everything did, and they were pop artists. So for me, I was just like, yo, I gotta change the structure of that. And I think that we did a great job of doing it. So when I look at a pop hit, I'm always trying to change the structure of what's there and make it the future.
Right, I tried to rip off Sexy Back a million times, but I've never managed.
It's a special thing. You gotta, the beat gotta drive you without nothing on it. And
no,
that
but
was beauty.
That's the most difficult. Like when you have something that is that simple, but that you can listen for 1 hour, it's genius, but it's impossible to do something the same, because if it's not exactly the same, it sucks. So I swear, I tried. I love this record so much. I was like, I gotta do something that vibe. I tried everything. It's impossible. It's just impossible because, because like, I think music and a lot of my records, they were like at the beginning, a lot of people would like say, but this is so simple, like when I did I Got a Feeling or records like that, and it was almost like a joke that I was doing, like, bah, 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 but doing something that simple, that is exciting, is very hard.
Guess what? That was your Sexy Back. Because I tried to duplicate, I can't duplicate that. So you took the elements of what you heard from me and took it and made it your own. That is the beauty, because everybody follows trend. So everybody was like, okay, this is what we got to go, creators, this way. So you made that song, bang, bang. You made same bang, 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 and you said, It's the same shit. Think about it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, simple is not simple.
Not at all. I agree. It takes time. You got to really think about it because it got to be complex but simple.
Yeah, because for simple to be exciting, it needs to be perfect elements, and that's the thing. I think we all learn from that. I'm sure, Martin, you agree. You know, like when you need to add too many layers, probably your original idea is not good enough. You know.
Whenever I'm in the studio and I'm overthinking about like. Adding more elements, trying to build it, like it has to, like for me, it's whenever I work on a song, the foundation has to be good. Later I can tweak the sound, I can make it better, but I'm not gonna just add random heads, etc. because I feel like the most magic, or at least that's how I work, gets done in the first half hour, or like maybe the first 10 minutes. It's a momentum, and then later you can polish it, but no, I definitely agree. But I also feel like it's very hard to keep it simple because we're overthinkers. We're trained overthinkers. We're always in the studio like, how can we make this better? How we can do that better? So for me, I noticed also whenever I'm in the studio and I have an idea, I'm always thinking like, fuck. Oh, sorry for the swearing. I'm like, oh, how can I make this better? How can I change this? How can I make it more complicated? But sometimes that's the wrong angle, because Animals was, for me, my biggest club song, and that whole song is based around simplicity. And I had 5 different versions from the drop. I sent the demo as well to David in, I think, 2014. And,
that's it's so funny.
But it's crazy. I ended up with the most simple drop melody. I skipped all the complicated. I had like one big saw synth and the was the first idea that I did. But I was like, nah, it's too simple. Push it to the side. And I tried all these other things, and I ended up coming back to the original. What instantly felt good and was the most simple, but the most, I don't know, it was playful.
So simplicity is key. I think we've established that. And David and Tim have been trying to recreate each other's tracks for the last 10, 20 years. So I love that little bit of the conversation.
Basically.
Let's
because
talk about
the formula, and it works. So I try to stay within that formula for a minute, because when you find a perfect chemistry of sounds, that's like the beauty, because it's like for us as creators, it's just ear candy when you find that perfect snare, that perfect kick, and that perfect, and then you want to add more, but that's it. Yeah. You did it. The job is done. You found the perfect marriage of everything.
Is there any such thing as a perfect kick?
I think for each song there is a perfect kick. For each individual song there's a different kick, or sometimes you can use the same kick but then different sub under it.
I tell you, because I was not good enough, but like 10 years ago, I was using always one kick and one bass sound, because it's true. The most difficult thing is to find the good kick bass. And okay, I had this one that was working, and I would filter it a little different, EQ it a little different, but I would just always use the same, and I was safe, like the rest.
Exactly.
And that was my trick. And now that I'm trying to use more elements, I'm more confused.
Exactly.
If it ain't broke. Let's talk about studio gear. Tim, what studio gear were you using back in the day, in the early days, and how has that changed to now?
Wow. So back in the day, we used tape machines. I don't know if Martin might know about tape machines. I came at the intel. We came at the intel of it though. But at least I got the experience, tapes, because I came in the era when it was tapes, and then it went over to Pro Tools. But it was with people using both at the same time. But for me, I had to rent an ASR-10, which is like a hardware keyboard, and I did all of my hits on that keyboard, all the way up into about 2006, about 8 or 10, something like that. Back then it was like a lot of hardware, to find, you had to go to the music store and buy the latest keyboard and do this and, to find sounds. And then it went over to computers. And then when computers came in the mix, it was like, for me, it was like the transition, like to say digital from analog, from a warm sound to a digital sound, like training your ear, cause it's like it's like, David can I think he can vouch for this. It's like when stuff changes, you was part of the change all the way up to it change on you. You know what I'm saying? When it changes on you, your ears you just start to hear different because you're so used to mixing from this way to now it's gear where the frequency level has went up. And how I started noticing that was through the phones. And I'm like, damn, songs sound different. And then I know I started listening to my old music from when analog was out. Yeah, it hit, but it's something about digital that makes it where you have this thing where you can put a limiter where you can boost it up and it just don't, if you know how to do it right, it won't clip. So I think the sound versus back then and versus today is, I would call it, back then it was called working harder. Today it's called working smarter. Because, people, I used to work with a lot of people and they used to complain about, say if Martin came in the room, he playing the keyboards he playing a synth on the computer. To an old school guy or a guy who's a musician who used to hardware, he's looking at Martin, yo, that ain't music. And I'm like, and I have to look back at him and be like, he's playing a piano. If you close it's the same sound. What's the difference? It's no difference when you putting your hands on it and him drawing it on he clicking on with numbers. That's called evolution of music. And so for me, it was all about just training my ear to understand digital versus analog. So, and I knew I was a guy of change. So for me, it was like, it was cool to learn because I'm always trying to learn. I was ready for the evolve. And when I saw Martin and I watched, I don't know if you ever seen Martin work in the studio, like that guy's a genius. When it comes to him placing that shit, sorry for cursing, placing that on the Fruity Loops, I'm like, yo, he's moving like how me and David probably would move if we was on our analog MP3s and he'd be moving that thing. I'm like.
But remember, because I think at the end of the day, it comes to melodies, and every time I saw Martin in the studio, he would come with amazing melodies that he would sing before drawing the notes. So, after, if you're gonna draw the notes, play the notes with a guitar, with a synth, with a piano, or draw them on a computer, what matters is the melody that you have in your head. And like Martin is a little melody genius, and so it doesn't really matter, I think, how you write it, and
Exactly.
it's what you're saying. It's you're making music, and the rest is just a tool. Even though I think that if we look at history, every time there was a technical evolution, was the time that there was a new music style. I think music trends are actually, because the chords, the melodies, I mean, there's not that many chord progression that we can make, but the sounds and the techniques, this is what changes everything. And if one day they wouldn't create the electric guitar, probably there would be no rock and roll. And probably if they wouldn't create a sampler, maybe hip hop would never be what it became. And if there was no computers, probably EDM would not have been what it is. I really think, you know, some gear changed completely music, because there was an innovation that inspired musicians to do certain melodies because they heard that new sound.
It also inspired, I think. For me, it's the same thing as you like. For example, you discover a new instrument or a new synthesizer or a new plugin. I get so I think what you just said, I fully agree with it, because whenever I hear a new sound or something that I haven't heard before, I get inspired. If I hear a piano sound, like I've heard so many times a piano, and I would start a lot of songs on the piano or on the guitar, but whenever I hear like a weird, unique, new, fresh sound, it gets me excited and like, wow, what is this? And I feel like in that excitement, you rediscover yourself in a way, or you challenge yourself to try something new, to try something different. And I think that's when you make music that will go further than what you've done before.
Martin, did you learn how to play piano and guitar after you learned how to produce on a DAW?
No, I started playing the flamenco, Spanish guitar, when I was like 5 or 6, and I actually write a lot on the guitar, but for me, I started piano lessons, I think, half a year ago, but for me, whenever I write on the guitar, it's not that I have a MIDI keyboard and it's MIDI in the computer, so whenever I had a chord progression on the guitar or in my head, I would draw it. Like I see it as it's almost like it's in the piano roll. It's almost like a painting or like a. So for me, that was the way how I started producing. It started with me listening to these guys being like, how did they do that?
That's wild.
And it inspired me to try to do that type of style as well. Like and also David's stuff. I remember hearing Love Is Gone, and I was analyzing the simplicity but complex at the same time.
That drop is so simple. It's like sexy. Actually, it's like sexy back simple, like bum bum bum.
Yeah, but that's I think.
Bum 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 bum. It goes like this for the entire record.
Yeah, but that for me, like for me, what was really fun, and also I learned a lot from it. I was not even making songs the same style. I was literally remaking those songs to try to figure out how certain sounds were made. I would remake Daft Funk from Daft Punk without using samples, but only using synths, like program the kick drum, but I think because of that, I learned so much. Back to the guitar, I would write on the guitar, but then I would end up drawing the melodies because I cannot put MIDI from a guitar in the computer.
So what is your studio setup as it is, Martin?
I can show you.
Okay. Great views.
So this is the studio. I hope it looks like
nice.
So I have a MIDI keyboard for use, and then I have one computer where I do my main stuff on. Like this is the production computer, and this one is the Pro Tools computer because I work in FL Studio, and then I do the vocal and recording from guitars, etc. I use Pro Tools because I love. I love how quick and how you can comp and make stuff sound good quick. So
nice.
But in the end, I started on just a computer. Now I think the rest, all the extras is luxury, but right now, I think you can get so much from just your computer. The only thing that I really like is some hardware, because some analog synths, like for example a Moog, like the low end, you cannot recreate, or it's very hard to recreate with a plugin. So.
And Tim, how have you found it over the years adapting to using DAWs? Do you use soft synths, or are you still all analog? Like, what's your process? Is it different? How different is it now than what it was when you were using the tape machines?
Now it's like it's kind of caught up to where I always wanted music to be, very simplistic, just like how music is. So I think less is more. So for me now, I just use like Martin said, the computer. Computer has everything. Like you don't need all that extra stuff. I'm in my studio now, and I think I just told my guy who put all my programs in my computer, and I'm glad they came out with the new Mac where you don't need no hard drive, because I feel like you shouldn't have to need no wires, period. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm waiting for, because I feel like that's the future. You know, it's no wires, it's cut on, pew, everything that you ever done.
What I loved working with you, and what was also really inspiring to me, was how you did a lot of the percussion based on beatboxing. And for me, I'm used to working on like a grid. Like I'll do the groove, but I don't do it by feel. I just adjust the groove setting, and then it in the FL Studio sampler, it automatically changes the groove. But like when we were in the studio in Miami, you were adding constant layers of beatbox, and then later you made a choice like, oh, am I going to replace the beatbox sound with a sample or with a real head, or am I going to keep it like that? And for me, that was super eye-opening, because it was so much more focused on feeling, on how do you say it, like on human groove, not computer. And that to me was very. It was.
I was shocked too by that.
It was incredible. I was like, wow, it blew my mind. And then you start listening to the older songs in a different way, and you're like, fuck, it's Timbo beatboxing on many of those. But it was very, very eye-opening and very inspiring.
Super impressive for people to understand, because I think, you know, for people to understand what it is, I think it's a way also, like when we were in the studio, I was playing some beats and I saw in his face that he was a little bit impressed, and then he was like, okay, let me show you something, kid, you know. Okay, and now go back to your room and clean it up. And he went to the booth and same, you know, started from the beatbox for the drums, but then did like guitars and you know, just by making sounds but putting some distortion on the top. And it was like, I was completely shocked too by that, like doing the whole track with the mouth.
But
that's
I realized
insane.
that's what makes it human. That's what makes it sexy. A computer is cannot be sexy, or like you can program, like I'm a programmer, but like it's such a different approach and a different mindset and a fucking cool approach to produce that way, because you basically making your own puzzle pieces and like it's sick. I actually tried it myself as well. I ended up replacing my voice with, like, because I'm not a beatboxer, but with like heads and like snares and claps. But the human error, or not the error, but that you're a little bit off, is sometimes what gives it its magic. And especially listening to to Timba, it's in the songs that you hear the human, the not being perfect makes it super fucking perfect. And I think that's really that was really eye-opening.
Yeah, that's what it is. What is it? What we say? Yeah, what's dope? What makes you whack?
So we're not going to have any Martin Garrix beatbox tunes anytime soon. Then you've already tried that.
Don't worry about that. No, I only use this like a groove indicator, because I've been experimenting a lot. Especially 2020 has been a weird year. I've had a weird, like, for me, because I make pop music, but I also make festival music. But making festival music feels a little weird when there's no festival. So I've been experimenting. I've trying new sounds. I went full focus on this project I've been doing for the last 5 years. But next year we're gonna go really hard with the project. So we basically finished the whole album with Area 21. It's like two aliens. They crashed on planet Earth to party and to. But then they crash here and they're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? They don't understand borders. They don't understand racism. so there's two aliens. They're basically going to be like, what are you guys doing? So we wrote all these fun songs where we experimented with different grooves. With, like, for me, everything started on the guitar, on the bass line. It's a very, like, the new stuff is very sexy, and Timba and also David have been big inspirations for me with the project, because it's like it's fun, and music is about fun. Like, I made my biggest songs whenever I was in the studio, not thinking about anything, but in the moment, enjoying, happy. And I feel like if you feel happy, if you feel good, it's contagious to the people around you and to the music you will make.
So you just mentioned about 2020 being a bit of a rubbish year, Martin. That aside, I'll go to Tim for this. The industry over the years has changed a lot for producers. What are some of the biggest changes, do you think?
For production?
Yeah, for production, for trying to make it as an artist. What have been the biggest changes?
You know what? I don't think it's been a change. I think it's really been like, okay, the world has been moving at such a fast pace that I think it make creators get more creative. I think 2020, I feel like we was already doing music by sending anyway, but I think the way it's changed now is like I can work with Martin, he have his keyboard, I can have my shit, I can work with Dave, we can do a song right now, and
let's do it.
You get what I'm saying? And it makes you be more creative, because like he's in his element, David's in his element, he can walk away, he can do things, and then you can get it right. It's not like you in what I've learned is you're not like in a building. We have to use this technology that's been given to us to make it work for us. You know what I'm saying? So it pushed me more creatively. It kind of like, even though the world stopped, because if I told you, yo, what if the world just stopped? What would you do? It's the same way how I approach music. What if you couldn't buy no equipment? How would you make music? And I said, that's what made me start doing stuff with my mouth and start, okay, I got to get all this energy that's in me out. So it's the same way with technology today. And I feel like for producers, this is a way to create a new sound. I felt like it was a way for me to really dial in on what I have, because the computer is a powerful tool. There's so much in here. So I just started to play with my Ableton and learn new tricks, and started really just getting and dial it in. So I don't know about for other creators, but for the most creators that I talk to, it's been a dial in moment in creating different elements and reinventing themselves.
Yeah, and David, would you say the same about, especially the past year? I was going to say, how's the industry evolved, but I'm not sure if evolved is the right word for this year. But what have you been doing with your time, and is there any new things that you've done that you wouldn't normally do?
Sleep.
Well,
yeah, apart from sleep.
The main thing is touring is exhausting, traveling is exhausting. And to be honest, the fact that I could be every day in the same place has really been amazing on a creative level. Also, like I had questions, because I started this sound called Future Rave, and I was very excited about it. And it's festival music, and Martin was saying, yeah, okay, but there's no festivals. What are we doing then? And I still decided to put an EP out for the fans, even though I know it cannot be pushed by the DJs, because DJs are not playing, but I still did it out of passion and yeah, for the fans. And I'm super happy about this, but I've been feeling super, super creative just because of focusing on music, because we are with success, and I'm sure Martin can relate to that too. We touring so much that the lifestyles sucks all the energy out of us. And sometimes you go to studio because it's on your schedule, and between two shows you have 2 days of studio, but you actually super tired, and also just the fact that you say, oh, I have 2 days, you know, I have to make a hit record. But if you every day making music for fun at home, then this is when the real
It's a different
interesting
approach.
thing comes.
Yeah.
You know, because it's how we all started. We making music for fun, you know, and now I really feel like, you know, I'm making music for fun. It's not that, okay, I'm gonna have a hit record and thanks to that, I'm gonna do 200 shows for this crazy money. It's gonna make me rich. If I make a hit or if I don't make a hit, it's not gonna change anything money-wise. So, you know, I'm still gonna make music because that's what I'm passionate about, but I do it with maybe more freedom because I don't have this pressure of having to deliver, of having to respect, you know, like just the fact that my hours or days in the studio are normally limited because I have the interviews, I have the promotion, I have the shows, I have the business meeting, you know, the traveling, all of this, you end up with not so much time to do what you're supposed to do. And right now, you know, I don't know, I'm here, I normally, you know, I'm in London right now. Normally I have a studio in my home in Ibiza, but here I made a little studio in my home in London too. And, you know, I just wake up, take breakfast and make music for fun, you know, like for fun. It's such an amazing feeling.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about as well is the next generation of producers, the next generation of music creators. I know, Tim, you're heavily invested into focusing on the next generation as well, but how do you, as established artists, see your role to help the next generation? And how important is that? I guess we'll start with Tim.
It's always important, but I don't look at myself as a artist, you know, like I feel like these two guys, Martin and David, are artists. Like I look at myself as, we all artists, but in our own way, but we creators. So I look at it for the creative view. I feel like use the technology. So I think the way of music's going to be heard is through how we doing this, is like through Zooms, and it's just going to be fun. And this is the way of connection. I think, you know, just being abrupt to music technology. And I would tell any young person like that's starting today, like, and I think they're all doing it, you know, they're using the SoundClouds, all these things of today. So I think I really would ask Martin what to do for today.
Martin, what do we do?
You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's, you know, he's Spider-Man. He's the new Spider-Man, like, right? So why would you go ask the old Spider? I can give him some great seasoning from the past, but I feel like going forward is there. I feel like every artist now are already on that, you know, from the new generation. I think that because you have no choice. Think about it. We all stuck in the house. So you make music, and it's back to what I think is making it, like what David said, for fun. I think the passion will come back for a lot of people in the new generation.
Do you ever have?
It's like, woo, my thing blew up viral. You know what I'm saying? That's going to be the new thing. You know, TikTok. You know what I'm saying? But you was home having fun, and that's why I think music is going to be, you know, for this generation going forward. I think it's going to be all created.
So go on then, Martin. Your story is the most recent. Tell us how you broke through and what you did, and how people watching this can potentially do the same. So
for me, I had a really crazy story. I actually had a conversation with David about this in Miami like 5 years ago with Steve Angelo, and we were reanalyzing like everything that has happened in such a short time. Not only to me, but also to music, to the industry, and it's been a crazy roller coaster. But for me, I think right now music production, also because there's so many like loops and like whatever on the internet, it became easier to make music, or more accessible. Like you can hear like a top song on the radio, and then you find out afterwards it's a fucking loop that has been bought from like a sample free pack, and that pisses me off. But because stuff like that happens, I think right now, and what I also say to the people that I work with or who are signed to my label, I'm like, there's so much of the same. The only way you're gonna stand out, because now everybody makes music, everybody's a DJ. The only way you're gonna stand out is if you're unique, and if you have the right intention, if you have fun making it. Like I started making music, and I would run from my school to like back to my house with two of my friends. I would record their voice, chop it up, make it into like a sample, like put like drums to it, or make chords out of a note that my friend sung, or he would say like a stupid, like terrible lyric, and I would make a song around it. But I think the fun and the spontaneity, is it the right word? Spontaneity? Like I feel like that's when you capture the magic. If you don't think too much, if you just do what feels good. I've had studio days, especially right after Animals, I was only thinking like, oh, to make something like Animals, and it was eating me in the head. I was like, because I limited my own creativity because I was only thinking like, I have to make something like that. And I was stressed. I was thinking to myself like, fuck. I literally had studio nights where I would, because I made Animals when I was 15. I would be, after, like I would have interviews, people would come to me like, man, this song's crazy, when's the follow up? And I was like, no idea. And then I would recreate the exact same setting, like what I did right before, everything. I would recreate the same setting by going into the studio a different night, exact same time, hoping, because it was in my head. I was like, maybe that's how I did it, or like, but the whole creative, spontaneous thing was away, and it caused me stress. And then the last few years, I really realized is when you don't think about what you should make, or what people want you to make, is when you make your most spontaneous, your most exciting, your most like you want to make songs, or I want like. I know 100% Tim and David think the same, but you want to make music that right after you make a render, you want to run to all your friends, to your family, like listen to it, listen to this, because it's so much excitement and passion in what we do. And I think if you overthink what you should make, what do the people want to hear, etc., you lose a little bit of the magic and your creativity, because in the end it's about passion. And I think we're all very...
My experience about that, because you were speaking about when you started, and I remember, and I feel like it's so amazing creatively when you don't have success yet, because as no one is expecting you to have success, you just try tons of stuff and you fail, but it's normal to fail. And one of the 10 ideas becomes a huge hit. But once you have that huge hit, everybody's looking at you thinking that you're a genius and that everything you're going to do has to be as successful. And then you start to stress because they don't know that that was just one good idea out of 10 shit ideas. But now everybody's expecting you to be a genius every time you do something. And that's like a huge pressure. I feel like, the more I grow up in my career, the more I grew up in my career, the more pressure I started to put on myself to have hits. And that's why in the last years, I was just like, I'm just gonna make club music because it doesn't matter. I don't need to be on the radio. There's so much less pressure, and going from the foundation of being like okay, I'm gonna make records that just want to make me and my friend dance. And it doesn't matter if they're on the radio. It doesn't matter if they're number one on Spotify. Thinking like this for a minute really got me back to feeling inspired even for pop music. Because let's say like 3-4 years ago, I started to stress so much like what you were describing, of, all these expectations that the label has, that everybody, the industry has, and that you also put on yourself, of being able to deliver a hit every time. And that's not fun. What's fun is to be able to try different things. And sometimes it's big and sometimes it's not. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's funny when you mention the club tunes that you made, David. Is that for the Jack Back project that you did?
The Jack Back, or lately I've done this project with my friend Morten, and it's called Future Rave. And this is really big in our community right now. And this was just me making records that I wanted to play as a DJ, I was never trying to be on the radio or to be, not even to be streamed or whatever. But also I did this for like maybe a full year between Jack Back and the Future Rave, a year and a half. And now I just released this record with Sia that is more like 80s pop kind of. And I'm back to making pop again, but I do it with a new approach because, I kind of released this energy of like, let's just make records that, are making me happy, but what Martin was describing of the pressure that we put on ourselves to reproduce a success we had. I think
I feel like the biggest enemy is our own brain, because we're overthinking.
Exactly.
It's funny you say you didn't want the club tunes on the radio, but I still play them on the radio for you, David.
David,
thank you.
I remember David and I did a show in Amsterdam last year. I also tried Tim to come to the show. We were in Miami. I was like, man, come to Amsterdam. It's gonna be crazy. And then David came and we played it back to back, and he played me one of the unreleased songs with Morten. And I get goosebumps thinking about it. It, like, the whole crowd, all the lights went up, and it was this female vocal, and I don't know.
Take It to Heaven, maybe.
I have the video on my phone. I remember you played it, and it was one of the first times you played it, and I was next to David, and I look at the CDJ. I'm like, what's this song? And he was like, new project.
and what I realized is that I think the three of us here, we had at some point, what's the biggest privilege? It's to have a cultural impact. And I realized that this is what makes me the happiest. And it doesn't matter if it's a cultural impact because you have like a number one hit on the radio, or if it's a cultural impact because you have a new sound in maybe for us, electronic music, or maybe some credible street hip hop that everybody's excited about. But, standing for something that matters and having an impact on music is what makes me the happiest. Probably happier than to have a number three that is, redoing something that has been done by myself or somebody else.
Tim, have you ever felt the pressure with all these successful albums and records you've put out? Have you ever felt the pressure in the studio like these guys are talking about? And how do you deal with that? To follow up.
I think that's always a pressure, but I believe the pressure is really the other side of you, really pressuring yourself. Like what Martin says, your brain. I think that's the biggest enemy. For me, I mean, it was times in my early career, but then I kind of like just learned to like block that out, you know what I'm saying, and get into my happy space so I can create and make the best music that I can make, you know, and you got to find the best voice. I feel like some songs that we put out, what I've learned is I had expectations and then I expect it to do some certain things and it don't, but it actually really does, because some songs are meant, it's all about timing to me. And it's like some songs can be birthed later on. You know, you get put it out, you be like, wow, that song's a hit. I put that out 2 years ago. And that happened to me a lot. So I've been through the ringer. So I have to learn to Musa, to get out of my own brain and just, once I'm not having fun doing it, then it's like, okay, I know no hit's gonna come out of this. You know what I'm saying? I gotta be like, I think we all can agree, we gotta just be making music just to be making music, not looking for nothing. Because once you do that, it's gonna be free. You're not even going, it might be the wackest one out of that bunch that you don't like, but you still have fun doing it. But that be the one that blow up. But at least you made music that you had fun. It wasn't about, oh, you might like David could have did a track. They'd be like, and I walk in there, I'm like, give me that track. And he'd be like, what? But he had fun doing it. But I can know where to place it. I'm like, yo, we can get, if we put Adele on that. He probably wasn't even thinking like that. You get what I'm saying? That be the beauty of watching other creators come in and see the love that you put into something. You know what I'm saying? And if that dies, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think that everything dies, you know, like, I done been through it all. Like, I done went through in my early careers where, you know, all of us producers had to live up and say, oh man, because people put all this expectation on you. And I just went through every ringer. But I think the thing is for me, that made me realize who I am, and what kind of blocked all that stuff out is me falling down. When people was telling me I was cold, or he can't, you know, because they'll smile on your face and laugh and talk to you. Oh yeah, this and that. But then they always, when you don't do a hit after, it's like, oh, on to the next, you know. And when I heard, you know, a couple of those comments, and to me, those comments are needed, because you need to never relax, but always have fun. But you don't want to relax. You don't want to relax. And sometimes, you know, the success, we started partying, we started tasting life a little bit. And that's when everything goes to the shitter. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so you need those companies. I learned to appreciate when they think I'm not hot. You know what I'm saying? I instead of being like, you know, putting pressure on myself, it's like I start to find like, maybe I'm not hot because I'm not living in my truth at that moment. You know what I'm saying? And like not being happy within myself. So I take it as like, now it's just, that comes with the territory.
It's interesting what you say about sometimes not noticing something that you've made. You know, someone else might hear something you don't. And Martin, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, because we did an interview on Radio 1 a few years ago talking about animals, and you can tell, I can't remember the story myself, hopefully you can remember, where it was actually another track you brought out around the same time that you love more than animals, right?
So the crazy story is about animals was that I did the melody, the dun da da dun 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 dun, when I was 14, and I met David at the time. I met David 10 years ago, and I sent him I spammed him. I sent him a bunch of ideas, but one of those was the chords from Animals. And then I kind of forgot about it. I sent David like 30 songs a week, so I can understand why he was like, this kid.
But I missed it. Shame on me.
No. I missed
That's
it too,
so
because so I made that melody, and then I was like, oh, cool. But I make a lot of melodies. Like I will do a day, and then I'll end up with like 10 new chord progressions, melodies. And then I had a new production computer when I was 16, and I was like, you know what? Let me scroll through some old ideas. And I listened to, I think, 50 melodies, chord progressions that I did on my old production computer, my first production computer. And that night I'm in my bed and I'm having like ding 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 ding. I'm like, wow, that's catchy. And it was one of the ideas that I listened to earlier today, but that I forgot about for like 2 years. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try something with it. And then I did the drop. And then right at the time I did another song, which was a remix for so it was a remix I did for Midnight Sun by Roy Gates. And I loved progressive house. Like I love I'm all about melodies and chords that with the coloring that make you feel something, that make you feel good, that make you feel like you can rule the world, I'm all about emotion. And I did this one song, this one remix, and I was like, this is gonna be huge when I release it. And then right at the same time I did Animals. And I was like, oh cool, another club